Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Hanson. I am a software developer at IBM, and I have been working on the Istio project since its start. First time I'm giving a lightning talk, so here we go. So, what is Istio? Just kidding. It is the end of the week, and the conference has the same name, so I think I can pretty safely skip over this slide. One of my areas of expertise in Istio is understanding how various resources generate the appropriate configurations which are supplied to the Envoy process running in every Istio proxy sidecar in the form of LDS, RDS, CDS, etc. This means that as a part of my role at work, most of the questions that get directed my way are along the lines of, I created this virtual service, destination rule, or service entry, and my requests are failing. What's the first thing I ask for? Access logs. That's right, access logs. As a testament to how long I have been working with Istio, but long before the days of IstioCTL, which provided a means to inspect Envoy's configuration for listeners, routes, or clusters, there were only access logs and config dumps. If you can step your way through an Envoy config dump from one of Istio's sidecars, props to you. Find me on Slack, let's be friends. Now, I could ask to see their virtual service, destination rule, or service entry first. After all, those types of errors can be briefly summarized into the following categories. Connection errors with your service entry, usually a port or protocol mismatch. 404s, probably something wrong with the host name or virtual service. 500s, probably a bad destination rule. But if their applications are using an unknown host name, a different port, or maybe there is another service entry with protocol TCP port definition capturing more traffic than intended, looking at the rules is not going to tell the whole story. In cases of failed requests for sidecar to sidecar traffic within the mesh, or between sidecar and the egress gateway as it attempts to communicate with an external service, access logs can help give a better idea of where in the request path an error occurs. Is that 404 coming from the outbound proxy at the source or the inbound proxy at the destination? Did it even reach the destination? For that 503 failure, does the cluster name match with the expected service name and the subset you have defined in your destination rule? Also, is the service entry, virtual service, or destination rule even impacting the request traffic? Or did the request fall through to the allow any pass-through cluster? These logs provide an extensive amount of information that can be used to troubleshoot issues. The error could be how Istio is capturing the traffic at the source or the destination, how traffic is routed through the user-created traffic management resources, or how the application itself is attempting to communicate with resources inside and outside the mesh. Logs also encourage novice Istio users to start learning to interpret and diagnose errors themselves. No more hand-holding. From an access log entry, users know which listener, route, and cluster in Envoy was used during the request. And you can use IstioCTL to inspect the JSON for those objects to see if there are any misconfigured host names, timeouts, or TLS contexts. And it even says which routing resource was responsible for generating the configuration. However, most people don't know what those access log fields mean. It used to be that if I wanted someone to be able to figure this out by themselves, I would have to point users to the line in Istio source code, which defines the custom log format, and then provide a link to the envoyproxy.io documentation to explain what those fields mean. The process is a little convoluted at this point, and only really ambitious debuggers would bother jumping through those hoops. Then, at KubeCon North America in 2019, I heard about OnGuard. If you have already heard about it, great, just bear with me. Take an access log entry, pipe it into the OnGuard tool for processing, add in JQ, and you get a pretty printed JSON representation of the log, complete with labeled field names. It even included a special flag just for parsing Istio's custom log format. So I thought, aha, smarter debuggers means less pouring through access logs for me. But it wasn't quite there yet. After all, when someone asks me, hey, why is there a URX response code in all these failures? What does that mean? The result? I still have the manual step of pointing to the envoyproxy.io access log page. It's gotten to the point where if I type an Envoy proxy in my browser, it knows to send me directly to the access log page instead of the main documentation page. So, what can I do to make it include everything I want in one place? After some HTML and CSS educational refreshers, I wrote, or hacked together, so please be gentle, a UI which incorporates OnGuard and Envoy's documentation all into one place. Paste in the access log entry using Istio or Envoy's default log format, hit the button, and out comes the process JSON log output from OnGuard. Nothing new at this point, just a UI for a CLI tool. So what I did was I wrote a scraper for Envoy's documentation, pulling everything regarding access log command operators and their corresponding descriptions. From the UI, if you click on one of the JSON field names or values, you get the description of the fields pulled directly from the documentation. Everything in one place. Hooray! I'll hold for applause. Anyways, I developed this mostly to make my personal workday easier, but I hope someone else will find it just as helpful as I do. Special thanks to the creator of OnGuard. You are awesome and clearly my inspiration. Also, thanks to Envoy for having docs that a beginner like myself was able to get a scraper working pretty easily. The code for my UI and instructions for how to use can be found as a repository on GitHub. And just in case I did not stress it enough earlier, I am a beginner in HTML and CSS, so I welcome any suggestions or improvements as pull requests. Also, always curious if there are any other feature suggestions that could round out the tool. And of course, feel free to reach out to me on Istio Slack as @GIHanson. Thanks everyone, and happy service meshing.